The rent bill landed beside my roast chicken before I had taken my second bite. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, pushed it across the table with 2 fingers, as if the paper were dirty. At the top, in bold black letters, it said, "Monthly Occupancy Contribution." Beneath that was my name, my bedroom number, and a total of $2,400. She did not call it rent. She said that word would sound too harsh. "Pay by Friday," Vanessa said, "or move out." The fork in my hand stopped halfway to my mouth. Across from me, my son Daniel stared at his plate. His wife had arranged the Sunday dinner beautifully. There were candles in small glass holders, linen napkins, and the good china I had bought them after their wedding. She had even placed a little vase of white roses in the center of the table. $2,400? I asked. Vanessa leaned back in her chair. "That is more than fair. You have the master-sized guest room, your own bathroom, access to the kitchen, utilities, internet, laundry, and parking. We have been carrying you for nearly 11 months. Carrying me? Daniel finally looked up. Mom, Vanessa is just trying to make things more organized. Vanessa tapped the bill. You receive your pension on the 1st. The deadline gives you 5 days to arrange the payment. If you cannot afford it, then we need to discuss other housing options. Other housing options, I repeated. A smaller apartment, assisted living, maybe a senior community closer to town. Daniel's eyes flicked toward me, then away. I had not moved into their house because I was helpless. I had moved in because Daniel called me 11 months earlier and said they needed help. Vanessa had just given birth to their daughter, Lily, and Daniel was working longer hours at the hospital. Their mortgage had increased. Their childcare costs had doubled. The roof over the back addition leaked whenever it rained. I had sold my small house on Willow Street, paid off the remaining mortgage, and put the proceeds into the account Daniel said they needed for repairs. He promised I would always have a home with them. Vanessa now wanted to charge me for the room I had helped create. I placed my fork on the plate. What happens if I do not sign this? I asked. You do not need to sign anything, Vanessa said. You only need to pay. Then why did you put a signature line at the bottom? Her expression changed for less than a second. It was so brief that Daniel might not have noticed. I did. Vanessa had always been careful with her face, but surprise still found a way through. It is a standard acknowledgement, she said. It confirms that you understand the arrangement. I picked up the pen lying beside the bill. It was the blue one Daniel had given me on my 65th birthday. Vanessa watched my hand. Mom, Daniel said quietly, you do not have to decide this tonight. Friday, Vanessa corrected. She has until Friday. I read the bill again. The language was stiff and official, but the message was simple. Pay to remain in the home. Sign to acknowledge that I was no longer family living under my son's roof. I was a tenant, and they were my landlords. I could have torn it in half. I could have stood up and reminded them whose money had repaired the roof, whose savings had paid the hospital bill when Lily was born, and whose name had been on the first mortgage statement. Instead, I nodded. Fair enough, I said. Vanessa smiled. Good. I knew you would understand. I took out my pen and signed the paper, but I did not sign on the line she had shown me. I signed in the empty space beneath the printed terms, beside the tiny paragraph she had failed to read. Then I folded the bill once, placed it under my plate, and returned to my dinner. Vanessa's smile disappeared. She reached for the paper, but I put my hand over it. Friday, I said. You will have your answer by Friday. That night, at 9:17, I opened the blue suitcase I had kept beneath my bed for 11 months. I did not pack clothes. I took out a brass key, an old mortgage statement, and a sealed envelope with my handwriting on the front. It said, "For the day they ask me to leave." I had written it 3 years earlier, before Daniel moved me into his house, before Lily was born, before I convinced myself that a promise from my son was stronger than a piece of paper. The next morning was Monday. At 6:42, Vanessa knocked on my door and told me the shower was reserved for Lily until 7:30. At 7:10, she texted me a photograph of the rent bill with the words, "Payment required by Friday" printed beneath it. At 7:35, Daniel called from the driveway to ask if I could stop using the downstairs television because the electric bill was too high. I said yes to all three things. Then I opened the envelope. Inside was a photocopy of a cashier's check for $186,000. The check had been made payable to a construction company in Daniel's name. The date was 3 months before I sold my house. On the back of the copy, I had written a sentence in my own handwriting. This money is for the house, not for Daniel personally. At the time, I had believed the distinction was understood. Daniel told me he was refinancing the house and needed help covering the down payment and renovation costs. He said my contribution would give me permanent residence in the finished lower level, with a separate entrance and kitchen. I remembered the conversation clearly because I had asked him twice whether I needed a written agreement. He had laughed and said, "Mom, do you really think I would ever put you out?" I believed him. The lower level was never finished. Instead, my money paid the remaining balance on the mortgage, the roof repairs, and a new heating system. Vanessa said the separate entrance would make the house look strange, so they used the space for storage. My furniture went into the garage. I moved into the guest room. On Monday morning, I took the cashier's check copy to the public library and used one of the computers to search the county property records. The website was slow and the names were difficult to read, but after 40 minutes I found the deed for Daniel's house. The owner listed on the deed was not Daniel. It was the Willow Family Trust. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. I had created the trust after my husband died. The trust held my Willow Street house, a small investment account, and a narrow strip of land behind the old property. When I sold my home, the money from the sale had been transferred through the trust before the cashier's check was issued. I had forgotten that the attorney who handled the transfer advised me to keep the trust open until the proceeds were fully distributed. I remembered signing several documents in a conference room that smelled like coffee and paper. I remembered being tired. I remembered telling the attorney that the money was going toward Daniel's house. I did not remember transferring the house into Daniel's name. The county record showed that the house had never left the trust. A second document was listed beneath the deed. It was a beneficiary occupancy agreement, filed 2 months after my payment. I had never seen it. The agreement stated that I retained lifetime occupancy rights in the residence as long as I did not voluntarily surrender them in writing. It also stated that any person living in the home who attempted to charge me rent or remove me without proper notice could be required to vacate the property. I copied the record and saved the file to a library computer. Before I left, I called the attorney's office listed on the document. Miriam spoke carefully. "The trust owns the property. You are the beneficiary with lifetime occupancy rights. Your son and daughter-in-law were granted permission to reside there under the conditions of the agreement." I scheduled an appointment for Wednesday morning. That afternoon I went home and found my bedroom door open. Vanessa had placed a cardboard box beside my dresser. "What is this?" I asked. "Decluttering," she said. "The room needs to be ready in case you decide to move." Inside the box were 3 sweaters, my framed wedding photograph, and a small wooden jewelry case that had belonged to my mother. "You packed my things." "I am trying to help you accept reality." "What reality is that?" "That you cannot keep expecting us to provide a luxury room for free." I looked around the room. The wallpaper was peeling near the window. The bathroom faucet dripped. The closet door no longer closed because Vanessa had stacked Lily's winter coats inside it. "It is not a luxury room," I said. "It is the largest room in the house." "Because it used to be the nursery." "Then perhaps you should have thought about that before moving in." "I will think about Friday," I said. Vanessa looked disappointed that I had not argued. At 8:03 that evening, Daniel came to my room. He stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets. Mom, can we talk? Of course. Vanessa feels like you are taking advantage of us, he said. Does she? She says the arrangement has become unfair. What arrangement did you think we had? He rubbed his forehead. You moved in to help. We all thought it would be temporary. You said I would always have a home here. I know what I said. Do you remember the money I gave you? His eyes shifted toward the window. Mom, we used it for the house. Did you think it was a gift? I thought it was family help. That is not an answer. He stood up. I do not want to fight about the past. Neither do I. I want to understand the present. On Tuesday, the deadline was 3 days away. Vanessa placed a small notebook beside my breakfast plate. Every page contained a list of household expenses: electricity, water, internet, groceries, property insurance. She had divided the totals by 3 adults and added a management fee for administrative inconvenience. The number at the bottom was $2,400. You made a mistake, I said. She drank her coffee. I did not. Vanessa closed the notebook. Do not make this difficult. I looked at her. You put a rent bill beside my dinner plate, because polite conversations did not work. What polite conversations? She narrowed her eyes. You are acting like an investigator. What financial document? The rent bill. It is not a contract. Then you will not mind if I have someone review it. You have until Friday, she said. After that, we change the locks. Daniel was in the hallway. I saw him hear the sentence. He did not correct her. That afternoon, I went to the bank and asked for the account records. I left with a folder of statements. The cashier's check had been funded by the trust account, not my personal savings. The payment was recorded as a property investment. 2 weeks later, the trust had paid another $43,000 directly to a contractor for the roof and heating system. The teller pointed to another account. That account was opened by your son, she said. He was listed as an authorized manager, not the owner. She looked at the screen. The Willow Family Trust. The rent payments Vanessa had been requesting were not just cruel. They were going to an account owned by the trust that held the house. The teller lowered her voice. Mrs. Harper, there is a recurring payment from that account to a credit card ending in 4412. When I returned home, Daniel and Vanessa were waiting in the kitchen. He demanded to know why I had involved a lawyer. Because you are threatening to change the locks on a house owned by my trust. The silence was complete. Vanessa's face went pale, then red. Daniel stared at me as though I had spoken another language. What did you say? He asked. I said the house is owned by the Willow Family Trust. You put the house in a trust? I did not put the house in the trust. It was already there when I gave you the money. Vanessa grabbed the countertop. That is impossible. Is it? Daniel looked at her. She looked back at him. Something passed between them, something I had not been allowed to see. Mom, Daniel said, we have paid the mortgage for years. No, I said. The trust paid the mortgage. He shook his head. You are confused. It was the first time he had said it. Not angry, not accusing, just certain. I felt something inside me become very still. I am not confused, I said. Vanessa stepped forward. You cannot suddenly claim ownership because you are upset about a rent bill. I am not claiming anything suddenly. I am reading records. Daniel reached for it. I pulled it back. No, I said. You will read it when I decide you are ready. Mom, give me the folder. No, I repeated. He looked wounded. Vanessa looked frightened. I carried the folder to my room and locked the door. By Wednesday, the deadline was 2 days away. Priya placed 3 documents on the table. It was dated 4 months after I moved into the house. Daniel acknowledged that the money from the sale of my home had been contributed to the trust for the purchase, improvement, and maintenance of the residence. He agreed that I would retain lifetime occupancy and that the property could not be sold, mortgaged, rented, or transferred without my written consent. I read the letter twice. Why was this never given to me? Priya folded her hands. It was sent to you by certified mail. I never received it. Your signature is not on the receipt. Vanessa signed for it. I looked up. Priya continued. The delivery record shows that it was accepted at the property. The envelope was returned to our office unopened 6 months later. My fingers went cold. Why would she return it? That is what we need to determine. Did my son try to remove me? I asked. Not directly. He asked whether the property could be converted into a private rental arrangement. A rental arrangement? What? She said. Are you going to pretend the credit cards are not maxed out? Are you going to pretend the business is not failing? The trust account has money in it, and your mother has more rights than anyone understood. We needed a way to make the house work for us. She took a step toward me. You are going to destroy this family over a room. No, I said. You tried to turn a home into a bill. The sentence hung between us. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. You think a lawyer makes you powerful? No. Reading what I sign makes me careful. Daniel sat down and covered his face. I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. That evening, I opened the envelope from my husband. His handwriting filled 2 pages. He wrote that when he died, he wanted me to have a home no one could take from me. He knew Daniel loved me, but he also knew love could become complicated when money, marriage, and fear entered the room. He had asked the attorney to create the occupancy agreement because he wanted me protected even if Daniel's circumstances changed. At the bottom, he had written 1 sentence. Never confuse being needed with being safe. I read that sentence 3 times. Then I packed 1 suitcase. Not because Vanessa had won, not because Daniel had the right to put me out. I packed because I had finally understood that a legal right could keep me in a building while my heart was being evicted every day. On Friday morning, the deadline arrived. At 8 o'clock, Vanessa entered my room with 2 men from a locksmith company. Daniel stood behind her. You said you would have an answer today, she said. I placed the rent bill on the dresser. I do. Are you paying? No. Then you need to leave. Daniel looked at me. Mom, please do not make this worse. I took the formal notice from my suitcase and handed it to him. He read the first page, then the second. His hands began to shake. What is this? Vanessa asked. The trust's response, I said. She grabbed the pages from him. Her eyes moved quickly across the text. You cannot do this. I am not doing anything. I am enforcing the agreement you tried to make me sign away. The locksmiths looked uncomfortable. Vanessa turned to Daniel. Tell her. Tell her what? Tell her she cannot threaten us in our own house. Daniel looked at the notice again. It is not our house, he said. The words struck her like a slap. She stared at him. He continued, his voice barely above a whisper. The trust owns it. The locksmiths left without changing the locks. Vanessa followed them to the door, shouting that the documents were fraudulent and that I had manipulated everyone. When she returned, she was crying, but the tears did not soften her voice. You planned this, she said. I prepared for the day you asked me to leave. Where will you go? Daniel asked. I looked at my suitcase. The small cottage behind my old house. He frowned. There is no cottage. There was a workshop on the property. The trust kept it. I had it repaired last year. Vanessa stared at me. You have been planning to leave? I have been planning to be safe. Before I left, Daniel followed me outside. Mom, he said. I waited. I did not know she was going to change the locks. But you knew about the amendment. He looked down. I knew she wanted you to sign something. I thought it was an expense agreement. You saw the email. I wrote the email. Yes. He swallowed. I was scared. Of what? Losing the house, losing my marriage, losing control of everything. You were willing to let me lose my home to prevent that. I thought you would understand. I understood. I simply did not accept it. He began to cry then. Quietly, the way he had cried as a boy after breaking the window. I wanted to put my arms around him. I wanted to tell him that fear did not make him a bad son and that mistakes could be repaired. But I also knew that comfort was not the same as forgiveness. Daniel, I said, you may come to the cottage when you are ready to tell me the truth without asking me to protect you from it. He nodded. Does that mean you forgive me? It means I am leaving the door open. You will have to decide what you do with it. I drove away at 10:14 on Friday morning. The rent bill remained on the table. I had written one sentence across the bottom. Occupancy is not permission. Family is not ownership. 6 weeks after the dinner, Daniel came to the cottage alone. He brought a folder. Inside was a new letter, written in his own hand. He acknowledged that the money from my house had been used for his property. He acknowledged that I had lifetime occupancy rights. He acknowledged that the rent demand was never a fair household arrangement. It was an attempt to pressure me into signing an amendment without understanding its effect. At the bottom, he wrote that he had failed me before Vanessa ever slid the bill across the table. I read the letter and placed it beside my husband's note. Why did you write this? I asked. Because I finally read the papers, he said. That is a beginning. The kitchen was small. The porch needed painting. The heating system made a strange clicking noise at night. But I could leave my shoes by the door without asking permission. I could use the bathroom whenever I wanted. I could invite a friend for dinner and place fruit anywhere in the refrigerator. I am peaceful here, I said. He nodded. With you as the tenant. I closed my eyes. The rent bill had not been Vanessa's idea alone. Priya placed one more paper in front of me. It was an email printed from the trust office's records. The sender was Daniel. The recipient was Vanessa. The subject line read, "Get Mom to sign." The message was brief. If she signs the occupancy amendment, the trust will recognize the new arrangement. Make it look routine. Do not mention that she can refuse. Once she signs, we can use the property income to cover the debts. I read it without moving. The room seemed to become smaller. Property income? I asked. Priya nodded. There is a separate issue. Your son and daughter-in-law have been using the trust account to pay personal credit card expenses. They may have believed the account was available because Daniel was listed as manager. He was never permitted to use it for personal debt. The rent money was not meant to help with bills. It was meant to make me sign away the boundary that protected the house. Priya pointed to the original occupancy agreement. The paper Vanessa gave you is not a valid amendment. It is a proposed acknowledgement designed to create evidence that you accepted a landlord-tenant arrangement. What happens because I signed it? Which part did you sign? I told her I had signed in the empty space beneath the terms, beside the paragraph that said the document did not modify the trust or occupancy agreement. Priya read that paragraph and nodded. You signed where it confirms that the paper has no legal effect unless the trust approves it. Vanessa showed me the signature line at the bottom. Then she expected you to sign the wrong section. Can they change the locks on Friday? I asked. No, Priya said. If they attempt to remove you, they may be in violation of the occupancy agreement and state law. But I want you to understand something. Legal rights do not automatically repair a family. I know. Do you want to remain in the house? I looked down at Daniel's letter. I want them to understand that I am not a burden they can invoice, I said. Before I left, she gave me one final envelope. This was found in the trust file, she said. It is from your husband. I held it but did not open it. Why would my husband have something in the trust file? Because he helped create the occupancy agreement. I put the envelope in my bag. On Thursday morning, the deadline was 1 day away. Daniel was at the kitchen island. He looked as though he had not slept. "Did you meet with a lawyer?" he asked. "Yes." "Mom, you went behind our backs." "I went to the office that manages the trust that owns your house." He flinched at the word owns. "Vanessa says the document you signed proves you agreed to pay rent." "No. It proves I signed beneath a paragraph that says it does not change my rights. You could have told us before making this a legal battle. I tried to tell you for 11 months that something was wrong. You never said you wanted the house. I did not want the house. I wanted the promise you made when I sold mine. Then why did you write an email asking Vanessa to get me to sign away my occupancy rights?" The color left his face. He looked toward the hallway. Vanessa was standing there. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Vanessa said, "You read our private emails?" "No. The trust office gave me a copy of a message connected to the property." "It was a misunderstanding." "Was the rent bill also a misunderstanding?" She crossed her arms. "We have debts." Daniel turned toward her. "Vanessa. Can I visit again?" "Yes." "Can Lily come?" "Yes." He looked down at the letter. "What about Vanessa?" "That depends on whether she wants to visit me or negotiate with me." A faint smile touched his face. "She may not know the difference." "Then she has time to learn. A year has passed since the rent bill appeared beside my dinner plate. The house is still owned by the Willow Family Trust. Daniel and Lily live there under a new occupancy agreement that Priya prepared. Vanessa is not listed as a manager of any trust account. She and I exchange polite messages about Lily's birthday and Christmas. We are not close. We may never be close. Daniel visits every Sunday. Sometimes he brings groceries. Sometimes he brings nothing but himself. I prefer the second kind of visit. Last month, he sat on my porch and asked me whether I regretted helping him buy the house. "I regret that I let helping you become a reason to disappear," I said. "The money was not the mistake. The mistake was believing that love did not need paperwork." Then he asked, "What did you sign that night?" I smiled. "You have read the agreement. I know what the agreement says. I want to hear you say it." I looked toward the creek. The water moved over the stones in a steady, patient rhythm. "I signed my name beneath the words that protected me," I said, "not beneath the words that frightened me." Daniel nodded. The paper his wife expected me to sign was supposed to make me a tenant in a house I had paid for. She thought I would see the demand, feel ashamed, and sign wherever she pointed. She believed an older woman living with her son had no power except the power to beg. She was wrong. My power was not in shouting. It was not in humiliating her back. It was not even in owning the house. My power was in reading the page. My power was in remembering what I had given and refusing to let anyone rewrite it as charity. And my power was in understanding that a deadline can be used against you, but it can also give you a date by which you must finally choose yourself. Vanessa gave me 5 days to pay or leave. By Friday, I had done both. I left the room they had turned into a bill, and I took my life with me. If someone you love ever makes you feel like a burden in a place you helped build, remember this. Do not sign from fear. Read every page. Ask questions. Keep copies. And never let another person's urgency become the reason you surrender your own safety. Sometimes the most powerful answer is not a speech. Sometimes it is one signature, placed exactly where they never expected